It's a very serious thing. I said, she wants to impeach. Watch. Impeachment is so divisive to the country that unless there's something so compelling and so overwhelming and bipartisan, it was 197 to nothing. And other than one failed presidential candidate, and I call that half a vote because he actually voted for us on the other one. But we had one failed presidential candidate. That's the only half a vote we lost. So we had almost 53 to nothing. We had 197 to nothing. And the only one that voted against was a guy that can't stand the fact that he ran one of the worst campaigns in the history of the presidency. But she said, there's something so has to be so compelling and so overwhelming and bipartisan. I don't think we should go down that path because it divides the country. She was right about that. And it's just not worth it. That was Nancy Pelosi a year ago, right? And I think it's a shame. I think it's a shame. But as I said, if we can put this genius to work on roads and highways and bridges and all of the things we can do, prescription drugs. You know, we had, Secretary Azar's here, and I want to thank him for this, but we had first time in 51 years where drug prices actually came down last year. First time in 51 years. But what we can do working with both parties in Congress would be unbelievable. It'd be unbelievable, all we can do. And I know Chuck Grassley is working very hard on it, and Mitch is working very hard on it. But what we can do is incredible. What we can do just generally. We've done so much without it. We've rebuilt our military. We've cut regulations at a level that nobody thought possible. We'll always protect our Second Amendment. We all know that. But I just want to tell you that it's an honor to be with you all. I want to apologize to my family for having them have to go through a phony, rotten deal by some very evil and sick people. And Ivanka's here, and my sons, and my whole family. And that includes Barron. That includes Barron, who's up there as a young boy. Stand up, honey. Ivanka, thank you, honey. Come. So I just want to thank my family for sticking through it. This was not part of the deal. I was going to run for president, and if I won, I was going to do a great job. I didn't know that I was going to run, and then when I got in, I was going to have to run again and again and again. Every week I had to run again. That wasn't the deal, but they stuck with me. And I'm so glad I did it, because we are making progress and doing things for our great people that everybody said couldn't be done. Our country is thriving. Our country is just respected again. And it's an honor to be with the people in this room. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
President Trump savoring the triumph, his acquittal in the Senate trial of his impeachment in the East Room of the White House, surrounded by his Republican defenders and his family. He spoke for more than an hour, a lengthy diatribe, revisiting long-held grievances and responding directly to his acquittal, but also other grievances that he holds against Democrats and media and even members of the FBI. Moderator, we should also point out the president did use a profanity in his remarks. We apologize that we weren't able to intercept that. It was a live event, but we wanted to note that we obviously not something we wanted children to have to hear. But right now, let's bring in moderator and Meet the Press, Chuck Todd, in our Washington bureau. Chuck, break it down for us.
Well, look, I mean, for half of America, that's going to feel like a dystopian speech of some sort of bizarro world speech, but for half of America that they may have been celebrating all along, I think in some ways it's a speech we should come to expect. But there's a few things that I think are worth taking note of. Number one, he's not over this, and he clearly is going to be looking for some sort of revenge or vengeance. He seems to be in that mode. So I am curious what senators like Lamar Alexander, Susan Collins, Marco Rubio, all of whom believe the president did something wrong, some of whom I think Susan Collins has said that she believes he will have learned a lesson from this. I would be curious to think what they think of these remarks and whether they believe this is a president that is ready to, that has learned the lesson perhaps they hope. He may have learned a lesson, but I don't know if it's the lesson they want him to hope. But here's what was important about what he did. He was really flexing his cult of personality muscle, right? This is a Republican Party that is no longer organized around ideas. It is organized around a person, pure and simple. And he was almost doing the conditioning thing. Loyalty will be rewarded.
He's not quite.
And as you saw, boy, was loyalty rewarded. If you were tough on them, I mean, he singled out people who do not believe the president did something. He singled out people like Mitch McConnell and Lee Stefanik, both of whom believe what the president did was wrong, but have been careful never to pass public judgment and instead been very process-oriented and sort of fought on political grounds. And the fact that he singles them out for praise, it's almost he's conditioning this Republican Party that if you want my support, if you want my praise, when you're with me, look at what I will do for you. So I do think he was sending a message to certainly to Republicans that weren't all in with him. You know, he didn't single out Lamar Alexander for helping him sink the vote on witnesses because Lamar Alexander said what he did was inappropriate. He didn't single out some of those senators who helped bring along the skeptics because they were skeptical too. So I do think that was, I mean, when you see that he talked about how he picked primary winners and things like that, this was sending a message to the entire membership of the Republican Party. Any of you try to join Mitt Romney, you gotta be aware of my power over this party right now.
Yeah, it was clear it was personal. Chuck, thanks. I want to go to Michael Beschloss, NBC News presidential historian. Michael, somebody sent me a note. In 1999, President Clinton spoke after his acquittal. He spoke for about a minute and a half and apologized to the American people. Obviously quite different than what we saw here.
Right, that was 21 years ago next week, and Bill Clinton was contrite. He thanked the people who had helped him. Obviously, Donald Trump is very defiant, and the interesting thing is that for someone who is a pretty tough guy, he made it very clear what a personal ordeal this has been for him, saying that he's gone through hell. And you know, Lester, one of the things that historians always look for in presidents is how a personal crisis changes them. We will know in the future how Donald Trump's leadership will be different for good or ill because he was impeached rather than not being impeached.
All right, thank you. Let me go to Jeff Bennett right now on Capitol Hill. So impeachment is in the rearview mirror. What happens now there?
Yeah. You know, one of the things that was interesting to hear the president say, and even though his stream of consciousness speech took us to other places, it was billed as an impeachment victory speech. And yes, even though impeachment, the trial is over, it's in the rearview mirror, to use the phrase that the Senate Majority Leader used yesterday, this question about Ukraine stays with us, in part because John Bolton's book is due to come out in March 17th. And you also have leaders of the various House investigative committees signaling that they intend to subpoena John Bolton. And if John Bolton honors it, the American people would, in due time, find out what he knows about President Trump's interaction with his Ukrainian counterpart that was really at the heart, of course, of this entire impeachment saga. On the Republican side, you have a handful of Trump allies, to include Senator Chuck Grassley, who was in the room. You heard the president name check him, talking about starting reviews of Hunter Biden's interactions in Ukraine, his work with Burisma. That really strikes me as political posturing. I think at this point, you talk to most Republican senators, to include those in leadership, they really want to turn the page on this now that President Trump has been acquitted. But certainly, his interactions with Ukraine's president and all of that will still play a huge role in this election year.
All right, Jeff, thanks. Let's go to the East Room of the White House where the president spoke. Hallie Jackson is there right now. Hallie, give us some of the color of the room. Who was there? What was the atmosphere like?
Absolutely packed, Lester. We come to the East Room a lot for various events. I'm here all the time. But this was full, and I don't know if you can see behind me here, full of people who are now starting to file out. Every seat filled with some of the president's defenders, his allies, the lawmakers that he called out one by one. I have to tell you, in addition to the broader points that you and Chuck and Michael and Jeff are making about the content of the speech editorially, and the president's, frankly, defiance on this, his lack of an apology, except, by the way, to his family for them having to go through what he described as a phony, rotten deal. This felt like a Keep America Great rally mixed with a 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue formal address from President Trump. I did not see any teleprompters in the room. The president had notes and, of course, that newspaper with the headline "Acquitted" that he held up, but he riffed constantly. He aired a series of grievances, almost a greatest hits of grievances at this point, of everybody from his fired FBI Director James Comey to servants, public servants who he has had long-standing issues with. And the reaction in the room was incredibly supportive. There was laughter as these senators and Congress members were getting called out. Many of them were standing up, giving thumbs up. I don't know if you could see that from your end, Lester, with the reverse shot of any cameras here. But this felt like a big. The president called it a celebration, not a news conference, and not a formal speech. And that is certainly the vibe there was. I would note that there was not a lot of reaction in the room when the president called out, frankly, Mitt Romney, who, of course, issued that conviction vote, was the only Republican to do so, the only senator in history to vote against his own party, essentially, in an impeachment proceeding. But it was rather remarkable in the length of time that the president simply went on this extended riff in front of the people who, frankly, support him the most in Washington. There are some notable names not here, too. I will point out those moderates that you're talking about, people who, as Chuck said, questioned the president's propriety in the phone call and in the interactions with Ukraine, but didn't ultimately find that it rose to the level of impeachment, essentially of course, didn't show up. But who was here in the front row? Mitch McConnell, who got a standing ovation, the president's legal team, who got a standing ovation, Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise, who also got standing ovations from the Republicans and the president's allies in the room. Lester, I'll toss it back to you as I think they're trying to clear the room out behind me here, and we've got to get going out of the East Room.
All right, understand. Hallie, thank you. Let me go back to Chuck Todd. Chuck, this had to be exceedingly difficult for Democrats to watch as the president really celebrated this sense of triumph. What happens now for the Democrats? You've got, you got a primary season underway. Yep. Nancy Pelosi says she has got a legislative agenda. What's next?
They have a real divide inside. Basically, there's a Washington divide among congressional Democrats, some who believe you got to keep going, you got to keep these investigations at least going because you can't slip on the job of accountability. More stuff's going to come out. Nancy Pelosi has a desire to start to pivot towards issues like health care, prescription drug prices. Lester, you and I were witnesses to that, right? Speaker Pelosi basically wrapping the knuckles of any reporters trying to ask a second question on impeachment. But she has members that want her to do more. And then, of course, the presidential campaign is going, guys, stop this. We'll got this. We want to talk issues. We want to talk about beating Trump at the ballot box. So I don't think Democrats have figured this out yet. And I think they're still a bit having their own impeachment hangover on this and trying to figure out how can they walk and chew gum? They got to still try to pursue Bolton, I think, in their own heads, and at the same time start thinking about November.
And what we heard here likely will be the refrain of the president in his re-election bid.
It will likely, right? It's just like they're out to get me. They tried to take away one presidency. They're going to try to take away this one. I mean, I think we know how he's going to run. It's how he prefers to run. It's him against the world, grievance. It is certainly his more comfortable position to be. I'll tell you, it still is not. I mean, they've made a decision how they're going to run this race. Just supercharge the base, supercharge the base, supercharge the base. But I don't know. There is a tolerance level at some point with the middle of this country that's going to crack on this stuff. And the question is when.
All right, Chuck. Michael BESCHLOSS, give me your thoughts on how this impeachment will be remembered in presidential history.
Well, I think it'll be remembered in light of what follows. And, what we saw today, Lester, was a kind of a look, an amazing look at a president's internal thinking and emotions of the kind that we rarely get from a president while he is in office. If you wonder what Donald Trump's reaction to his impeachment was, you certainly know now. And the question is what that's going to point to. Will there be vindictive